Today we talk about confidence, how to bring confidence into any situation, and how to rewire your brain so old stories where you failed stop having power over you. And we talk to Dan Nicholson, a wealth advisor who finds cutting-edge tax loopholes to maximize your long-term wealth outcomes.
Close your eyes and you think about the time when you felt the most powerful that you've ever felt in your entire life. Like, we all have that moment. Okay, it's somewhere in there. You might have to think for a while. That's okay. But somewhere in you have a moment where you felt powerful.
So welcome to Entrepreneur in Action. Dan, tell us about your business.
Yeah, well, my primary business for the last 15 years has been helping what I call purpose-driven entrepreneurs achieve financial certainty, which is really their wealth on their terms. And I have done that through a few different capacities. One is through the capacity as a CPA. So I'm a CPA, don't hold it against me. I have a team of CPAs and other tax professionals, and we've been helping folks do advanced tax planning for the last 15 years, and a few other people have gotten into the space in the recent few years, especially if you go on TikTok or Instagram, you'll hear lots of fun tax strategies, but we've been at it for quite a while, and showing folks how to reduce legally and ethically their taxes by 30 to 100%. And then in the other capacity as really outsourced CFO. And what we see there is that 85% of the net worth of a small to medium-sized business owner is held in their business. So 85% of their net worth, but only 2% of business owners actually know the net worth. And there's consequences to that. So it's sort of like putting all your money in a 401k and never being able to see the statement balance. So business owners in general don't know how much capital they can even take out of their business, how much debt the business can manage, and how saleable their business is. So there's consequences there in terms of actually growing that net worth and being able to achieve that financial certainty that I talk about.
Absolutely. So my understanding of taxes is this is super, super important for everyone. If you want to, win in the finance part of your life, right? Because maybe your biggest expense in your entire life is paying taxes.
That's right.
So tell me, like, a new customer coming to you, what is the big advantage that you can provide?
Yeah, so since we've been doing it for so long, we've developed our own methodology that we call the 4 levels of tax planning. Level 1 are strategies, tactics that you already qualify for. Someone just hasn't told you about it yet. These would be things like, maybe heard of the Augusta Loophole as an example. It's become more popular on social media. Most business owners already qualify for it. They didn't know about it. Level 2 strategies are ways that you can adjust your behavior to turn something that isn't a deduction into a tax deduction. An easiest example of that, paying your kids. So kids cost money. There's a way to pay them through the business, get a tax deduction, and it can usually be non-taxable to your kids. There's more advanced strategies there, but I'm just trying to give examples of things that are more in the zeitgeist these days and easier to kind of wrap your head around. Level 3 are advanced. I'm sorry, did you have something, Michael?
I was going to say, what is the Augusta Loophole for people who don't know about that?
Sure. Yeah, I'll go back to that. So Augusta Loophole is named after Augusta, Georgia, where the Masters golf tournament is held. Sometimes it's called the Masters Loophole as well. And basically, through some great advocating during the Masters golf tournament, there's hundreds of thousands of people who come into Augusta, Georgia to go to this match. People rent out their homes. Well, it's really administratively difficult to have to deal with tracking rent and something called depreciation for a small period of days. So through these lobbying efforts, got the tax code years ago updated where you can rent your home out up to 14 days completely tax-free. So that's the tax rule. The loophole, or the business context, is that as a business owner, independent of sort of the home office, you have these different meetings that might qualify as the equivalent of, if you were a larger company, something that where you'd rent a boardroom, sort of like conference, executive meetings. Maybe you have some clients over for dinner. those are examples of things that would qualify. So the business can rent your house from you, pay you rent equal to what it would cost to rent to a local conference room in your area. Could be $500, could be several $1,000s, depending on where you are in the US. Business pays you rent. Business takes a tax deduction. As long as it's 14 days or less for the year, it's tax-free to you. So you got paid, you got the cash, business got a tax deduction. Essentially, you got a tax deduction for paying yourself. That's the Augusta loophole.
So that is new to me, and I love that. That's amazing. I'm definitely going to try to use that as
Right
soon as
on.
possible.
Yeah, you
That's
absolutely should.
great. Yeah. Um, so you have innovative tax strategies, and how do you like? So you've been doing this in a while, but
Mm-hmm.
how are you finding out about all the cool new tax strategies? Do you figure these out with your team, or do you like how do you find these?
Just being a crazy person, I guess, and digging into it. That's part of it. But to sort of rewind a little bit, when I graduated college, I did a fellowship at the board that writes all the U.S. accounting standards, sort of the equivalent, I guess, of clerking for the Supreme Court. So I worked on this really technical derivatives and hedge accounting standard, but really kind of cut my teeth in research and building some great relationships with people who are kind of in the know and at the bleeding edge of what's new and evolving in the accounting world. And so that kind of gave me the skills to, like I said, do the research. And that's what we do is we do the research. So and we build relationships with people who are also doing research. So tax code is constantly evolving. It's both evolving in the sense of Congress writing new rules. That's less frequent, although it does happen. But a lot of new kind of strategies or things that evolve happen in tax court. So we love these people. They're not usually my clients, but we go to school on their tuition. Somebody decides to go to battle with the IRS, big corporations, high net worth folks, because they have a lot at stake. And like I said, we love those folks because that all becomes public information. And so rather than take any unnecessary risk, we can just copy what tax court has decided and what the IRS publishes in their audit manuals. And so those are where a lot of the insights are gained is from those court cases. And then it's just a constant game of trying to build new relationships with people doing innovative things and assessing the risk around it and whether or not it's something we'd want to share with clients. So I want to help my clients pay less in tax, but also reduce their risk. So we got to kind of glean, okay, yeah, you did this thing, but is my client going to end up in tax court? If so, I'm not going to recommend it because my clients don't have an appetite for that.
Absolutely. Yeah. So tell me about your background, Dan. So what told you that this was something that was going to fascinate you, that you were going to not only study this in college, but then go on to build a business? How did you get into this?
Yeah, accidentally is the most honest answer. I was a marketing major at first in college, and first person in my family to go to college. So frankly, I didn't know a whole lot about accounting, tax, business. My dad was a journeyman machinist. My mom was a lunch lady, just hardworking Americans, and so I learned the meaning of hard work from them. But in terms of kind of the business world, it was for whatever reason something I was always interested in. And then just had a series of combination of right place, right time, and maybe luck. So into my freshman year, I got this email from a business school advisor, and they said, "Hey, UPS, the shipping company, they've got these internships in marketing, and there's all these college scholarships." And like I said, I'm first person in my family to go to college, scholarships. I'm living at home. I'm a commuter student, and I'm a marketing major. So I go there, I'm in a suit. I just taken a business communications class, got a nice resume. I go in there, it's at one of the shipping hubs, and come in. I'm the only person in a suit. Everyone's in like jorts and a t-shirt. It's like the start of summer, it's hot. They show this cool video of loaders and unloaders and sorting packages, and not at all below me, again, the blue collar background. But I sort of sheepishly raise my hand. It's like, hey, this is really cool, but like I got this piece of paper that says there's like marketing internships. Like, we don't know what you're talking about, but there's a couple guys from finance in the hall. Why don't you go talk to them? So I go out, we talked to these guys for about an hour, and by the end of it, they said, hey, we've got a role as a part-time finance supervisor. You'd work in the hub, but you'd manage a team of about 20 people auditing shippers for compliance, billing compliance. And so at 19, into my freshman year, I ended up getting this job, completely autonomous. I reported up ultimately to the controller of the Northwest region. And that's what sort of set me on a path to ultimately become an accounting major, then get nominated for this fellowship. Cool that I had admittedly didn't know that it existed. And so there's sort of series of events, right place, right time, a lot of hard work, and so fellowship that led to other opportunities. And then along the way, I was miserable. And because back to being a marketing major, what I wanted to be was self-employed. And here I was in this path of being very, very technical and in the corporate drudgery where I had meetings, about future meetings, about when we maybe might do something in the future. So I kept changing jobs, but really the issue was I wanted to be self-employed. And what I saw was an opportunity in the market to do something different than what I saw other CPAs doing. And so that was ultimately kind of the mix of the technology background or the technical background combined with seeing this sort of pretty wide gap in what people were doing for small business owners.
That's it's awesome to hear the story because you took that risk, right? You were sitting in the room and everybody was doing one thing. They were watching the video. They were all getting the same programming, but you had this other idea inside, and you risked it by raising your hand, and you risked, like, maybe people could have thought like, this guy's foolish, but
Yeah.
that's not what we're doing here. But and then and again, almost like a fool's errand kind of thing, right? Go talk to those guys in the hall, and
Yeah.
yet it worked. You took action, and you did the different thing than the other people in the room, and here's where you are. That's amazing. That's an amazing story.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and I think back on it as this sort of major turning point in my life that then put me on this path where I get this fellowship. That I don't know that happens, that I get the job if my resume doesn't make any sense. It's like, you were a finance supervisor, that doesn't make any sense. Like, it still doesn't make any sense to me when I explain it to folks. And raising my hand was when I started college, I made a decision that I was going to show up in a different way, and I was going to take some chances because I was the painfully shy kid with a speech problem, and kind of a feeling like an outsider, pretty lonely kid. And I decided, it's like, you know what? I have this chance for the next 4 years to rewrite my own story in some respect. And so I'm just going to see where that goes. I may end up in the same place as a lonely outsider. But fortunately, some of those things just played out differently.
It's amazing to me to hear that because we do have these transitions in life, right, that are very visible to us. Like, I was in high school. Now I'm going to college. Not everybody knows me. They don't know the way that I chose to be in high school or the way I was boxed in. Either I did it myself or I felt that way, and that's what I did. And you broke out of that box. You took that step, and I feel like we actually can break out of these boxes at any time. There's times when it's really visible, like you're making that transition from high school to college. But sometimes we could just break out of a box that we've constructed around ourselves, like mentally, you know?
Yes, so true.
Um, what did that change for your life? Like when you started tearing down those walls between the old you and the new you. What did that lead you to as well? I know I'm hearing that's led you to new stuff in business. Did it also affect other areas of your life?
My entire identity shifted, and that sounds hyperbolic, but I think it's true because I went from being pretty reserved, raise my hand, I turn red if you call on me, not feeling seen. I always did well academically, but not really feeling seen. To It's like confidence begets more confidence. It's like, and so then you start to believe that you can do it, and then you start to expect that will be the outcome. So I went from expecting that I was just another dude who was gonna get through life, but I wasn't expecting myself to do something extraordinary per se, and I wasn't expecting myself to be in rooms with powerful people or in rooms where you're making a decision that's going to have a meaningful impact on others, to expecting that of myself and expecting I'm going to be in that room and expecting that I will not only be in that room, but I'll be a meaningful contributor and that people will want to hear what I have to say. Um, that hasn't changed the fact that I'm still shy and I got to work at. It's like some of those things are still true. Like it's still at 43, 25 years later. Like it's still hard. I still have to uh, work on articulating certain words without, stuttering a little bit. It's like those challenges haven't gone away, but what's changed is that I believe in the outcome. I have the confidence to, most of the time, not always, but confidence leads to more confidence.
It's definitely a muscle that we have to work within ourselves, to take those risks, because we don't really know what's on the other side of the chasm or the door that we're opening. Um,
So
I
true.
think it's really interesting, the conversations kind of go in this direction because this is something that fascinates me. I actually get a feeling when I'm like doing
Mm.
something that I think might be unexpected. And
Mm.
I just kind of feel like I'm opening a door. Hey, let's see where this goes. And
Right.
it's kind of like leaping off, like taking a leap into the unknown feeling. My stomach will feel like I'm lurching or something, but
Mm.
it always tells me that I'm on the right path. Like
Mm.
I'm doing something that I don't expect me to do right now. And sometimes I don't even know what's going to happen. What am I going to say
Right.
when
Right.
I start to open this door?
Yeah, it's so true. There's a
Oh, go ahead.
I think it was this guy, Dr. Michael Gervais, who I'm paraphrasing a comment, but confidence comes from proving to yourself in the moment that you can do it. And so, in other words, it's the people will tell you, "Well, just be more confident." You're like, "Cool, thank you. Sure, I'll just be more confident. Thank you." Not particularly useful. Like it comes from a good place, but it's the actual doing and improving to yourself that you can that then gives you that confidence. So the more times you can put yourself in a situation of just doing something new, and then it's not always going to work out, but when you do, validate it and then hold on to that, hold on to that memory. And this may sound silly or woo woo, but before I go into situations where I don't feel confident, which is more often than I would like to admit, but I close my eyes and I visualize those moments where I did something unexpected and I had a good outcome. And it's like, can I just try to uh, invoke that same feeling that I had 25 years ago, talking to the guys at UPS and having it kind of uh, manifest into something great. It's like just find that feeling and then try and use that to go forward in this new moment, and it just kind of compounds.
I like that one. I like the visualization. I hear that a lot from like athletes and people who are, high performers. Like their coaches train them to go through their whole, everything they're going to do in their, like if they're a gymnast, they're going to go through their whole routine mentally before they go to sleep at night, and they're going to visualize them doing it successfully and getting the score they want. And then they're going to do that again at the beginning of the day, right before they go into the contest. And that visualization is a key part of their training. So hearing you talk about that with other moments, like I think you're borrowing from science that is really training.
That's right. Yeah, I had the fortunate opportunity to learn that in my 20s. I was just really confused and sort of a period of a lot of anxiety, and worked with someone who specialized in anxiety, and they kind of taught me this trick of one, how memory works, and how we you could think about a memory, and it gets implanted in your brain in a certain way. If you close your eyes and think about it, some memories are in black and white and some memories are in color. Some memories are really small, and some memory, like in your mind's eye, there's the image. If you were to play it back in your head, it's like a small image. Sometimes it's a large image. Sometimes there's a sound, and that sound might be loud or it might be quiet. And so these memories almost have, we could go through all the different senses that we have, and they're in sort of implanted in our brain in that way. And so you can play that memory back, in some sense, invoke those same senses and feelings to harness it. Alternatively, some of those memories are really bad. And we had adopted a dog, and as we were leaving to go to my bachelor party, a friend had opened the door and kind of forgot that this dog was a runner. It's like you couldn't open the door without holding it. And the dog got out, and I was in flip flops, and I chased this dog down. Unfortunately, it ran into a busy intersection, and I was like feet away from this dog getting hit by a car. And it haunted me for a couple of years, just that, the memory of it. And I can talk about it now, but before I would have the same anxiety and the same feelings of shame of like, how did I let this happen? The lack of control that I felt. It's like I had the dog in my arms almost a couple times. Why didn't I just dive on him, right? And so I'd play these and ruminate over these feelings and sort of self-flagellation about it. And the reason why I can talk to you about it now is that in a safe way, I went through these memories and changed them slightly in my brain. So say it was in color, and now it's like, let me play it back as if it's in black and white. And if you're in a really calm state when you do it, you re-imprint the memory in a way that has less anxiety. And you can practice that and keep modifying the memory. Now the memory is no longer big, it's small. It's no longer in black and white, it's in color. It's no longer loud, it's quiet. And by being in a really calm state when I did it, it's like that memory doesn't have as much anxiety anymore. And so now I can talk about it and not immediately feel overwhelmed. So it works in both ways.
Oh, that's fascinating to me. Wow. Because I've noticed that, right? If something happens, right? Like, which always, that's part of life, right?
Yeah.
We have good things that happen, and then we have bad things that happen. And if something bad happens, right, of course, naturally, many times you get this big emotional wave,
Mm-hmm.
and it's so much because it's based on this, as you said, like some kind of thing that's out of your control, or you feel like
Mm-hmm.
you wanted to be a protector, and then you felt like you let something down, like you weren't operating at the level you wanted to operate at in that moment, or whatever happened. And we can all beat ourselves up about a million things, right? This is
Mm-hmm.
not unique to anybody. We all have done this, but
Absolutely.
you're saying you find a calmer time, and then you go back into the memory when you're already calm, and then find a way to, without like altering it, so that it's like a completely new, something made up. You're just sort of altering the way you perceive it in
Mm-hmm.
your memory banks, so that It takes out some of that emotion so that you can like you don't have to feel so much anxiety, because that's a big part of anxiety, right? Where you could define anxiety as being upset about something that's not something you can affect at that moment,
That's right. Yeah.
right? Like we have a real fight or flight mechanism when something is happening, and okay, yeah, that moment is happening. How can I bring my best self to this moment while it's happening? Most of the time, it's not happening, but you're
Yeah.
still thinking about it. And you're
That's right.
like torturing yourself if it's a negative memory, but that's a way to torture yourself less. So I
Absolutely.
really love what I'm hearing there, Dan. That's amazing to me.
Yeah. It really changed. Learning that changed my life in a profound way. Understanding anxiety is a slightly different language, but I think same meaning. It's future focus. You're projecting some negative outcome into the future that you don't think you can control. And so we do that because there's a similar experience we had in the past that feels somehow the same. And so we're projecting that negative experience into the current moment. So if you can change those, just tweak, you're not lying to yourself because that's not real. It's like back to that confidence thing where you can't just tell yourself to be more confident. It's like you need evidence to prove to yourself. No one else can prove to yourself that you can do it. You have to have the evidence and believe that it's true. So if it's false, you don't believe that it's true. Uh, so you got to take that same memory, but just change your feeling around it slightly and incrementally over time. And you can do that by being in a calm state, but also tweaking the way that memory is sort of implanted, like playing it back in a slightly different way. It sounds weird, but and kind of woo woo, but it works. And
I'm all
it's
about
a
what works.
strange thing. I'd never thought until I ran through this, and I had never thought about how, oh yeah, some memories are in black and white, and some are in color. Some are big, some are small, some are loud, some are like, huh,
Oh yeah.
strange.
How could you use that going into a meeting? Like, say you're meeting somebody, or maybe you're meeting with a company, or maybe you're meeting with a client, or something that you really don't know how it's going to go. It's something brand
Mhm.
new. How could you use that in your or how could someone, not either you or how could someone use that in their business life?
Yeah. So originally, I learned this stuff because it was impacting my business life, and I just didn't realize the direct kind of one-to-one corollary of feeling really anxious about the dog and some other things, and how that had then sort of parlayed into me feeling anxious in general, or it become like a habitual thing. And I don't know if you've experienced that before, but unfortunately, these depression, anxiety, they can become habitual, just like checking our phone. It's like just keeps happening, and then it happens even more often. So I think one is if you can identify what you're saying to yourself, and there's this list. If you Google the 10 cognitive distortions, there's these sort of 10 primary like should statements, all or nothing thinking, and so there's this exercise that you can do where you take whatever that thought is that you're ruminating over right now and you write it down exactly the way that it is. Now you got to work on not judging yourself and being honest. It's like just write it down. For me, it was should statements. Like I should have caught the dog. I should have told my friend, hey, remember, dog wants to run out the door. So wait, I should have. And so that's creating this sort of like suffering anxiety. So you write it down exactly how it is. You try not to judge it, and then you rewrite it without the cognitive distortion. So you remove the should, or you remove the all or nothing, and you rewrite it. And it doesn't give you the sort of immediate relief. It doesn't take you from 100 to a 0. It might take you from 100 to 95, or maybe the first time to 99. But what ends up happening if you do that repetitively, or every time you're having these, is you notice, like I did, it's like, man, I say should 50 times a day to myself. And so if I could go from saying should and sort of castrating myself 50 times, and if I could go to 5, how much better would I feel? Turns out a lot better. I'm prone for sort of self punishment for whatever reason. I'm prone to blame myself and think that I, again, should have done better or I should have known. So if I can go from a 50 to a 5 in the next 90 days, how much better will my life experience be? I'm not going to get to 0. I'm just, I don't say that to like give up or think or sound like a quitter. It's just that it's unreasonable to anticipate you get to a 0. But if you, again, 50 to 5, that's huge. So it's thinking about turning down the volume, removing those cognitive distortions, trying to reprogram some of those memories. And then if you're still, like, okay, that's great. I went from 100 to 99, but I need to be at like a 60 to crush this meeting the way that I need to. Then you close your eyes and you think about the time when you felt the most powerful that you've ever felt in your entire life. Like, we all have that moment. Okay. It's somewhere in there. You might have to think for a while. That's okay. But somewhere in you have a moment where you felt powerful, strong. You're about to Superman, whatever this thing is that you're going into. And you think about that memory, close your eyes, and you try to go through each of those senses. We're not trying to change the memory this time. We're just trying to invoke it. So what did it sound like? Is it in color? Is it in black and white? Is it big? Is it small? And you start to, in a weird way, get those feelings back, that sense of, it's not going to be exactly the same, but you can start to kind of feel that moment again. If you can't think about the time you felt like Superman or Superwoman, then you sort of go to, what is the place that I'm the happiest? Like, let me imagine I'm at the beach or whatever that may be. So you can try to bring that feeling back. Then the other thing is get a marble and roll the marble around in your hand. And if the meeting is Zoom, which so much of it is now, roll that marble around in your hand. This weird thing happens where our brain can only focus on so many things. So I'm just trying to take the edge off a little bit more. So I can't think as much about my anxiety because I got to talk and I got to roll this silly marble around in my hand that you can't see. So those would be the kind of examples or things that I would share.
That's amazing. Like rolling the marble, like to me, that reminds me of like, why do people like want to chew gum, which you absolutely cannot do during a meeting, but like it kind of takes that same impulse. Like I want to feel like I'm soothing myself. I want to feel like I'm achieving something. I want to feel some movement inside me, my body or something. But you can get all that same stuff, and it calms you, right? To just put a marble in your hand, right? There's no downside to having a marble in your hand. Nobody can see it. It feels nice to hold a marble in your hand. It feels comforting. You're soothing yourself. And like you said, it's going to take your focus off your anxiety. I've never heard that one before.
It's quiet too. You can get a bunch of these other like fidget type things, but it's like make a weird rattle and stuff. But the marble in your hand, it's quiet. I mean, you could drop it on the table, of course, but otherwise, it's not making a bunch of clicking where someone's wondering, like, what are you actually doing over there?
I'm trying to reduce my anxiety. Can't you see?
It's the cheapest gift that you can give someone that it could dramatically improve their life is like a 10-cent marble.
Seriously. Yeah. I love all these things because to me, these are all like the 1% things that you could do. Like you could just keep stacking all these things that make your life 1% better, 1% better. And these are the things we've talked about. These are things you could use in your business life for meetings, but these are also things that you could just use like anytime you're feeling anxiety. So these are all, I think, these are all things that I think people watching this could really benefit from. I want to circle back a little more to your business because I feel like we got onto that really cool stuff that I'm really excited about, but I want to give your business a little more time. So can we talk about like what are your goals with your business? Like at this point, you've been doing it for a while. Can you take me through the trajectory of like when you started? What were your early goals? Like how did you get those first clients? And
Mhm.
then where you're at now, like and what would be your goals continuing forward to keep growing your business?
Yeah. When I first got started, I sort of my marketing plan was to do 12 months worth of marketing in 3 months. That was my strategy. And this is about 15 years ago. So if we just do that math on the calendar, 08, 09. So a
And
lot
your
of
first
economic.
clients were going to be sorry. Your first clients were what? I assume you've had a trajectory of things changing over time. Where who were your first clients going to be in your
My
business?
first clients were frankly like friends and friends of friends. Like I just sent out an email, hey, this is what I'm thinking about doing. And I had signed up kind of right away 7 or 8 clients through just kind of a little bit of reach out and people giving me the benefit of the doubt from a past experience and things. And then I had those clients, which then led me to go full time. So I kind of built up a few clients before I actually left. There's a whole other story about how leaving happened for maybe for another time. But I start the business and I've got some amount of recurring clients, not necessarily enough that I can match my current income, but I had a runway, 3 or 4 months of runway sort of saved up. And so then I was like, well, I'm going to do 12 months of marketing in 3 months during the sort of time that I have. And I have a relationship based business. So that means I have to have relationships with people to, this is one of the things I feel like is missed a lot of times in business is that people use transactional strategies for relationship based businesses and they use relationship strategies for transactional businesses. It's like it doesn't necessarily work super well. So uh, I just said yes to everything. Now, I was in a period of my life where I was married, but we didn't have kids. So I could say yes to a bunch of different networking, in person events. And I used the strategy I still use today, which is I call myself an unconventional accountant because it sounds like a double negative. It's like accountant is conventions, your unconventional convention. It, like didn't make any sense, but it led people to actually go like, "What the hell is that? That is what is that?" Because when I just said accountant, people were like, "Okay, cool, you're the most boring person here." So like, next, I already know what you are. And within about 45 days, I would go to something. I would say, "Oh yeah, my firm's 10th degree CPA." So like, "Oh, I think I've heard of you. You guys been around for like 6, 7 years, right?" So I was just at another event. Had mentioned you. So this weird sort of thing happened where pretty quickly in Seattle, people knew about the business and they'd heard it from multiple people. So trying to engineer that scenario where someone hears your name or your business multiple times in a short window of time. So that led to uh, doing you know, 250, 300,000 in revenue in the first kind of 6 months time. And since then we've grown to out of 42,000 accounting firms in the U.S. We're somewhere around the 300th biggest firm. So we're not huge, but we're not small. We've been named one of the top 10 best run mid-sized firms in the U.S. And I've personally been named top 40 under 40 accountant, I think 4 times, maybe at least 4 times. So we've garnered some rewards and progress, just trying to do genuinely good work and help people. From there, I've built some other businesses that have more upside, but are less reliable. So I kind of think about building businesses. Step one, build a consistent, reliable business that will fund what I call your solvable problem, your unique definition of wealth. That's going to get you to your goal. It just probably isn't going to 10x. Now, CPA firms are not necessarily like 10x type businesses. Don't tell the private equity people that are trying to get into the space right now. And then on the other side, you want to build a business that has a lot of upside, but it's probably not going to be reliable. And so that might cash you out overnight, fund that solvable problem, may take a few years, but it doesn't pay your day-to-day bills, and you're not counting on it. When you do the opposite and you build an unreliable, inconsistent business with a lot of upside, then you ride a roller coaster, and you have some days where you feel really smart, and you have some days where you feel not so smart. And it's hard. It's hard to make long-term decisions when you've got short-term pain.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think we've all been there, right? So when you're feeling the crunch of how do I pay the bills this month? Somehow I did it last month. How am I going to do it this time?
Yeah.
It's really hard to make those like you said, long term decisions, which is got to be the basis of wealth management.
Yeah.
Like this is like wealth happens while you're in the market rather than like trying to time things. Or why don't you tell me about your
Yeah. So the game that I play is to grow your net worth. So anything that I'm doing tax wise, why do I care about that? Well, take what you were paying in tax, reallocate it to funding the life that you want so we can grow your net worth. Why do I care about helping you re-engineer your financials, setting up the right kind of systems, knowing the valuation of your business, knowing how much serviceable debt the business has, how much cash we can actually distribute, because that all goes back to growing your net worth. So we want to figure out your solvable problem. That's my language and part of what I write about in my book. Solvable problem is taking that sort of vision board that you might have and putting dates and dollar values to it so we can actually calculate the resources needed to turn that into a reality. Once we have that target, we can figure out the most efficient path. So I tell people, let's figure out how to fund your solvable problem in 10 years or less with the least amount of effort, least amount of risk, least amount of obligation. Generally speaking, people are like, hell yeah, let's do that. But in order for them to do that, they have to unlearn almost everything that they thought they knew about business and life because they've been wired to do everything at maximum effort and at maximum risk. And the consequences that they have is that they have a ton of obligation. And so they can be what I call, and this is a hyperbolic term, and I admit that it is, they become very exploitable because they're living in a lot of pain. And small business owners, and this is like my ultimate life mission, is I see a lot of small business owners living in a ton of pain because they've been redlining on effort and risk and obligation. And so then they become very susceptible to a hack, to a shortcut. And so they can be sold something, a short-term solution that they need because they're in so much pain. But it creates more problems, more risk, more effort. So I've had to unlearn a lot of what I learned in business school in a similar way that I had to unlearn all the things that I was dealing with anxiety, and to build a different sort of model that isn't just purely effort based.
So yeah, so tell me more of what does that look like? So if I'm a new client and I'm coming to you and I'm like, I want to understand, what does it mean, for me to go from a place where I'm in pain as a business owner and I'm susceptible, right, to some sort of a short-term solution that actually would create more problems. How do I get out of that, and how do you help those clients?
So there's a couple of do you have kids?
Yeah.
You familiar with the APGAR test that they give um, babies right after they're born? Like they check like what color they are and like temperature and all those sort of things to sort of check the vitals of a baby really quickly to see if
Okay.
they need any additional sort of treatment. So, sort of by way of analogy, do the same thing. That's actually an example of one of my 12 core principles using T learning over I learning. iLearning is where you're super domain dependent. Everything I do has to be accounting because I'm an accountant. That makes it really hard to solve problems because you constantly have to study what everyone else is doing in your industry. But oftentimes you already have the answer because there's other rules or things from life that you could apply to this situation, like onboarding, client onboarding. So like people will go research what other accounting firms are doing. But we already know something about onboarding as humans because you've onboarded new relationships, new friendships already in life. You've literally been onboarded onto a plane. So there's these sort of like concepts that we can take and then apply them to the problem itself. So that's called T-learning. You're pulling from other domains and then you're applying it to your specific domain. So I sort of developed this idea when I first started working with a client. I'm going to check their vitals. And because you can't, whenever you go to the doctor's office, they check your vitals and they make sure there's nothing emergent. And there's no emergency right now. You can't be stoic it's really hard to be stoic in an emergency. So check their vitals. And so I have a couple things I look at. I'll ask a client, what are your money rules? And usually what they will say is a dad joke. Now, I appreciate it because one of my greatest joys in life is messing with my kids and having them cringe when I say dad jokes. It just fuels me to do more of them. But they'll just say, oh yeah, my rules around money is just having a lot of it. And they're like, yeah, they're like, yeah, no, that's not really a rule. That's an outcome. And so what I've learned is that it's maybe 1 out of 500 people who have an articulate, written down set of rules and principles that they apply to their money. Super important because in finance and money, consistency is more important than accuracy. So consistency over accuracy. And it turns out that we are really, really subject to biases. And a loss hurts 7 times more than an equivalent gain. So we will do a lot to not have to experience a loss, even if it's wrecking ourselves. So what are your rules around money? Okay, you don't have any. All right. So right away, we're in the danger zone here. We don't have any core principles for how we consistently execute. Number 2, do you know how much you need to retire? And have you turned your goals into a solvable problem? 1 out of 50 people-ish will know the answer to that. And they'll have an answer or more will have like a ballpark number, but somebody who's actually like kind of put down pen to paper and tried to work it out. So many of us are we're going on this trip, trying to get to retirement, but we don't even know the address. So Google Maps isn't particularly accurate if you don't put in the right address. You don't tell it the method of transportation. So you can't figure out the most efficient route if you don't know the exact outcome and the resources you need to get there. So don't have a solvable problem. Okay, we're leaving a lot of money and stuff on the table. Next thing is, do they have a protocol around how they manage their cash? Again, most people don't have a protocol for it. They may have a budget. Now, a budget is a detective control. It tells you if you overspent after you've overspent. It doesn't prevent you from overspending, right? You log it in. For most of us, they log it in after they went to Target. And then they find out after the fact, I've overspent. So it's not preventative, but there are ways that you can set up your finances to prevent you from overspending. That's higher leverage than detective, finding out after the fact. So you have a cash protocol in place. Those are sort of the key fundamentals where we can figure out what needs to be tackled first before we even get to tax planning and kind of reevaluating how their assets are deployed. We got to kind of get the right foundation in place first.
It's interesting. As I'm listening to you, I think I've done some of these things just, with my wife. Like I thought, we have conversations, talk about money as some people do. Not everybody does, but to me, I'm always into communicating about everything. So I want to talk about money. which annoys some people. But anyway, so I
That's good.
talk about it, and
Yeah.
and we had kept having conversations where I would hear the question of how much money will we have in this year? How much money will we have in this other year? And so what I ended up doing was creating a spreadsheet where I was like, okay, this is what I know, right? This seems to be our spend rate. This seems to be where our investments are at. This
Mm,
seems to be where what the market return might be on the investments. And then I pulled it down in the Excel sheet so that to let the formulas uh,
yeah.
you
Populate.
make yeah populate within the cells, and I did it by year. So then when we'd have those conversations, I said, let's pull up the spreadsheet. Like,
Mm,
and I said up front, this is not going to be accurate, obviously, but this
mm,
is a guess. And so I thought that was like a fun tool just for me to make. Like, but
mm,
how do people, when you're working with them, how do they want to see like what their money's going to look like in the future? Like,
mm.
do you have a spreadsheet that you or some kind of like.
Yeah, it's a great question. And I will add one additional thing. I developed this thing called the five wealth types, and it's an assessment. Anyone can take it for free if they go to wealthtype.com. It takes 3 to 5 minutes. But what I've found in my research and working with clients over the last almost 20 years, um, both with my firm and then other places, is that people are not necessarily a saver or a spender. Someone could be a saver and a spender. Someone, right? It's like it depends on what you care about. It's like you may not want to spend anything discretionary except for that one thing you've always wanted goes on sale, and you're willing to let's go right now. So there's sort of, in a way, uh, people get characterized inaccurately as saver or spender. What I found is that there's five types. There's the hustler, the gambler, the optimizer, the saver, and and the outsourcer, saver and outsourcer, and uh, they can change over time, but they make different financial decisions. And the way that the hustler or gambler wants to see information is much different than the saver or the outsourcer. Now, the optimizer likes all the spreadsheets, love all the spreadsheets. The hustler and the outsourcer get really overwhelmed by the spreadsheets. So it kind of depends on their wealth type and how they want um, information to be presented, but also given their wealth type, what they need to implement right away, given their likely blind spots.
And I like how you approach that with them from like, these are the first things we need to like start paying attention to, right? So you have you're meeting them where they're at, which is that's that feels like a nice way to approach it. I am curious, like, how do other people want to, like some of the other types, if they don't want to see spreadsheets, how do people want to see their wealth? Like, how do they want to see their numbers if not in a spreadsheet?
They may want to see it more in a visual way, like here's how the like distance is shrinking, or they just want action items. They don't want all the data. Just what are the next three things that I need to do? Or for someone who's the outsourcer, they want a lot of credibility. So they don't want to be the decision maker. They want experts to tell them what to do. It's like that spreadsheet is cool, but like I kind of need you just to tell me what to do next.
Awesome. So we've got to wrap it up. Dan, it's been terrific having you on the program, and I really enjoyed chatting with you and learning about your business, and also learning about the different like anxiety techniques that we talked about. And I think that it sounds like you're really helping a lot of people through your business, and I'm really excited to keep learning more about what you're doing. Thanks a lot, Dan. All right, take care.